I'm walking to Scoob Books, and it's a second-hand shop, and I'm gonna go check it out.
Jaloux soleil contre amour envieux, soleil masqué par une face blêmie, qui par 3 jours a retenu mamie, seul au logis par un temps pluvieux.
I literally can't believe it. I walked all the way to the Oscar Wilde statue, and there's somebody sleeping on it. It's like ridiculous. It's really cold outside.
Jaloux soleil.
Hey guys.
So we're just doing a quick sound check, part of the obviously the behind the scenes reveal that we're giving to you tonight as part of your special ticket. Normally this would be a much more expensive ticket. We can switch round. Yes, we can. Already unravelling. Yeah. Let's go over there. Thank you very much.
So, yes, can anybody hear?
A number of firsts this evening. I mean, both for Wally and myself wearing a headset like this, with the elegance, of course, conversations with writers, artists, thinkers, and filmmakers from across the world. Part of the great offer that the London Review of Books gives to you, of course, along with the journal, the special projects, the website, and much else besides. Now, we're obviously delighted to be in such a bookshop with such a wonderful guest, and I'd like to thank all the bookshop staff.
Since I was 10 or so. So, he rejected it. So I used, somewhat irritably, I picked a title that came from the introduction to this book. Because I have to, I have to admit that although in the book itself, I am writing some fairly deeply felt opinions and thoughts that represent, the things that I care about. I have my thoughts and my writings are not as well liked as my amusing performances as an actor, and which, well, I've only been reviewed for this book once, and it was in the Daily Telegraph, and the critic, fortunate one for me in a way, but another that I was really one of the people who benefited from the status quo on Earth and the long ago, and I threatened people on behalf of a drug dealer. I threatened the witnesses against him, and it was not hard. It wasn't hard to play, and I'm the kind of actor who just, I'm not, I don't do the things that some actors can do, of really studying how other people are and becoming them. I don't know how to do that. I just play myself in imaginary circumstances. And it was not hard to imagine what I would be like if life had gone slightly differently, and my job was to threaten the people who were going to testify in the case. And I think that all actors realize that that our performances as ourselves are a choice. And we didn't really have to pretend to have these characteristics. We could pretend to have others. And of course there are people, you know, who, for instance, actually commit murders, pretend they didn't, pretend to be very upset that the person who was murdered. And I'll say that I once, by the way, we're not pals, we don't hang out, but I first met him in the 80s, but he hasn't seen as many plays. And he, you know, you learn something from seeing plays, and I know that he once, I don't know, do you ever see the American program Saturday Night Live? It's a comedy show on television that every American knows about, except Noam, because somebody called him and said, you know, they're talking about you on Saturday Night Live. And he didn't know what they meant. So, you know, he is someone that I revere, and I think he knows 100 times more about life than me, but there are certain things that I have experienced that he hasn't experienced, and I think that's true of everybody, you know, in the room. We've all, and we live a very short time, really, in order to write about what the world is like and what should happen politically. Really, we should all know history very well. We should all know the works of the greatest artists, because those are wise people. We should all have lived with, you know, visited primitive tribes and lived with them. And we all should have lived in impoverished countries. But nobody has time to do all of the things that are really necessary to write a book about what they think about the world. Everybody's book is going to be very incomplete. So I figured, okay, I'll be one of those people. And I will write an incomplete account of what the world should be, etc. What I think should happen, what I believe, what I think I've learned.
Thank you very much, Wally. I mean, one of the ways that many people have first come across your thought about the world is in the film My Dinner with Andre Gregory, directed by Louis Malle, where, you know, a dinner length conversation takes place, and in that interrogation, shall we say, of life and its possible meanings, the way it's constructed, its challenges, doubts and uncertainties, we, you know, find a huge amount out, it appears, about Andre, because you're speaking to him. But we also find much out about the much larger structures that govern the world, and also kind of motivate creativity and culture. Now that took a long time to make. It took a long time to rehearse, and then to script as you did, and then to deliver as though it was an improvised conversation. That then followed with Vanilla on 42nd Street, which took many years to rehearse in apartments and lofts, until you made it a film, again with Louis Malle. What is your sense of time and the relationship to creativity? Because those projects particularly took time. Writing, does it work in the same way? Does an idea or a sense of some possibility creatively emerge and then find quite quickly some traction on the page? Or is it something, again, that takes a much greater extended duration?
Well, I've worked with this director, Andre Gregory, for over 40 years. And I think one thing that we really have in common and that drew us together was, I don't know, some feeling that we're going to learn, that there's, I just had mentioned to a friend that I don't like to be rushed. It's something that I absolutely hate. I don't like anybody to tell me, look, you only have 10 minutes, hurry. And Andre must be the same. Because yes, my plays usually have been written over a period of 5 years, and one of them over a period of 10 years. And most people write plays more quickly. And I have one friend who has hinted broadly to me that if I could write faster, it would be better. And the things that, that because and there's another person I know, he isn't a friend, but not because he said this, but I don't really know the guy. He said, he accused me of being self-indulgent, and I think he would have probably, there's an opportunity, I don't know what that means, so it didn't bother me that much. But I think Andre's way of rehearsing a play is to take as long as it takes until he thinks it's worth presenting for an audience. And it's usually, we work over a period of years. That with the Uncle Vanya, we would work for 6 weeks. Then everybody would go off and do their different things. The other actors and I would go and work in other projects. But we would all take out our, it's sad if your last piece gets curtailed or whatever, but I don't like to be rushed, and I think I also like, and this works with acting as well, and with working with Andre, I like to forget what I did. If I'm interrupted and I come back much later to the piece of writing, or even a little bit later, I don't really remember so well what I wrote. And if it's a long time, I don't remember it at all. And that's kind of great, because then you sort of can look at it with a certain objectivity. And I think it's true of writing, but I know it's true of acting, that if you take the time away, your mind is still working. And you come back and there were scenes that really we couldn't do. And then suddenly they make perfect sense and you can do them. It's quite interesting. But I mean, people who are more prolific, they get certain rewards for that.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much. The last thing I want to do is rush the evening on, particularly given the high stakes that I've just been presented in.
Well, right. I mean, obviously, if I could answer that, I do want to reach a larger. I've always wanted to reach a larger audience, but. I've also always wanted to do the things that I find interesting and that I feel I know how to do and do. I mean, I have been, I've had the opportunity to be on a television program for the last 5 years. about every third episode I appear. And
What? Or what else you're doing?
I usually write longhand, but I've sometimes written certain things on a computer. It depends on my I wouldn't say even my mood. It's my writing mood. There are certain things that I sort of think, I bet I could write this thing on the computer and it would be better.
Thank you very much. Any more questions from the room? We haven't heard from the room now since the question just now. Any more questions? Yes, please. Gentlemen, just yeah, just there. Thank you.
What do you think or feel when you re-encounter your older works?
Can you hear that? What do you think or feel when you re-encounter your older works? I would say the truth is that I go back to the old time, and this is not, I mean, I'm not boasting about it, it's probably terrible, but I tend to think the same things I would have thought before. I don't sort of, I mean, there are not that many pieces. So, I mean, I haven't written that many plays. So, there are lines that I don't like. And I usually have been able to change them. And so some of my, even though I'm not a very well-known author, there are more than one version of certain of my things in print because I asked to change things and even have paid to change them. I mean, there are definitely lines where I feel, oh, that's terrible. But the whole thing, I'm thrown back at that time, really.
But it's interesting, isn't it, Wally? Because that question, in a way, raises the issue which you run with in such fascinating encounters throughout, of the idea of the I and the single self that we're told that we have and that we must maintain, as you said earlier, in various performances. Did everyone heard that question? Yeah, a good question to end on, I think.
And the way, the way the world was run 50 years ago was wrong, and now, there's perhaps just as much murder and sadism, but there's also the bizarre and unaccountable and inexplicable ignoring of the environmental crisis that it's so bizarre to be complacent about. So I guess it's just, I mean, I am obviously, look at me, obviously in many, almost always couldn't be more bourgeois, but I have moments at least where I'm not completely complacent and in a kind of state of hysteria about what is going on, which seems appropriate.
Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed. Before we
Well, right. I mean, obviously, if I could answer that, I do want to reach a larger. I've always wanted to reach a larger audience, but I've also always wanted to do the things that I find interesting, and that I feel I know how to do and do. I mean, I have been, I've had the opportunity to be on a television program for the last 5 years. On about every third episode I appear. And
Lovely, thank you so much, sir.